Okay, so I want to start this deep dive with something of a Rorschach test, if you will.
All right, I'm game. Hit me.
I'm just going to put a word out there, and I want the first, the immediate visceral image that pops into your head. Don't think about it too much.
Okay.
Testosterone.
Hmm. Honestly, if I'm going with just the pure cultural reflex,
Mm-hmm.
it's a gym.
Yeah.
It's a guy in a tank top, veins popping, slamming weights, maybe a bit of roid rage in there.
Exactly. The gym bro hormone. For the last, 50 years, we have culturally coded this one molecule as just aggression, bulky muscle, and male libido.
It's the macho molecule.
It is.
And that caricature, that stereotype,
Oh, yeah.
has done such a massive disservice to how we actually understand human biology.
Sure.
Because while we were all staring at the biceps, we were missing the main event,
Which is the brain.
the brain.
And that right there is the mission for this deep dive. We're pulling apart some really fascinating work from Dr. Corina Ianculovici and the Morrell Institute, and also some brand new research just published this year, 2026, in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience. Right. And the headline is not about lifting heavy things. It is about thinking clearly.
That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
The core pivot here is really about reclassifying testosterone.
Hmm.
We have to stop thinking of it as just a sex hormone or, an anabolic steroid.
It does those things. But
It does do those things, of course,
yeah.
but we need to start viewing it as a neuromodulatory hormone.
Neuromodulatory. Okay, that sounds a little expensive.
It sounds complex, but all it really means is that it's a master switch for the nervous system. It regulates how neurons fire, how they connect, and really surprisingly, how the brain physically structures itself.
Wow.
And the premise Dr. Ianculovici puts forward is that what we so often just write off as normal aging,
Yeah.
the brain fog, slower reaction time, that feeling of,
Of buffering. That's such a perfect word for it.
it really is.
With that feeling where, the input is there, you see the traffic light, but the processor is just lagging.
Exactly. And most people just accept that lag. They think it's the price of admission for getting older. But the data is starting to suggest something else entirely.
Okay, so let's get into those specifics. The source material draws a really hard line between physical energy and cognitive processing. I think that's an important distinction.
It's a very common trap. People think, oh, I had a coffee, I feel energetic, so my hormones must be fine.
Right?
But you can have the adrenaline to run a meeting, that sort of fight or flight energy, but have absolutely zero bandwidth to process the nuance in the meeting.
So caffeine gives you jitters.
And testosterone gives you bandwidth.
So what does that bandwidth actually look like in the data?
Well, the research Dr. Ianculovici cites shows that higher testosterone levels correlate directly with improvements in things like working memory and visual memory. But the one that really stood out to me, and this was across both men and women, was visuospatial ability.
Which is what? The classic cliche of being able to parallel park?
That's the cliche, yeah. But it's so much more integrated than that. It's about how your brain maps the physical world and your own place inside it. The paper uses this phrase, integrating cognitive rules into motor planning.
Okay, that sounds a little dense. Let's unpack that. Give me a real-world scenario.
Okay, think about walking through a really crowded airport terminal. You're late for your flight.
Yep. Been there. Stressful.
Very. And you aren't just moving your legs. You are scanning for gaps in the crowd. You're estimating the speed of the family with the stroller in front of you. You're looking up at the gate signs, adjusting your stride, all in real time.
You're multitasking, but with your body.
You are thinking through movement, and that is a massive computational load for the brain. The research suggests that testosterone acts as a kind of lubricant for that specific type of processing. It almost decouples the movement from the conscious effort.
So when your T is optimized, you just weave through the crowd without really thinking about it.
Precisely. You flow. When it's low, you might find yourself actually having to stop walking to read a sign.
Or you just feel overwhelmed by all the input.
That split-second hesitation, that's the loss of cognitive motor integration.
That makes so much sense. We've all had those days where you just feel clumsy or out of sync.
And patients often describe the correction of this, not as feeling aggressive or something, but just a return to fluidity. The friction is just gone. They call it cognitive resilience.
So let's look under the hood. How is a hormone actually doing this? Is it just making the signal faster, or is it physically changing the hardware?
It is remodeling the hardware. And this is the part from the 2026 literature that I found really compelling. We're not talking about software updates. We're talking about architecture.
Okay.
The research found increased functional connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the parietal
Okay,
cortex.
quick geography lesson for us. What do those two do?
The prefrontal cortex is your CEO, executive function, decision-making, impulse control.
Got it.
And the parietal cortex is like the logistics manager. It handles spatial awareness and all the sensory input.
So the CEO needs to know what's happening in the warehouse.
Exactly. And testosterone thickens the dedicated phone line between them. It improves the bandwidth of that communication. But it goes even deeper. The sources talk about dendritic arborization.
Arborization, like an arboretum. Trees.
It's a beautiful term, isn't it? If you picture a neuron, it has these little receiving branches called dendrites. They reach out to catch signals from other neurons.
Okay.
In a low hormone state, those branches can look like a tree in winter. Bare, sparse, just a few twigs.
So low signal capture.
You missed the nuance, right? Testosterone actually increases what's called spine density. It encourages those neurons to branch out to grow. It turns that winter tree into a summer tree with a full, lush canopy.
So you literally have more surface area to catch information.
You are physically growing the infrastructure of thought, and this is why that gym bro stereotype is just so limiting. We are talking about the structural integrity of the organ that makes you.
That is wild. We usually think of sharpness or intelligence as something you learn, like a skill. But this is saying it's also about how much fertilizer you're giving the garden.
100%. And it's not just the structure. The sources also mention it acts on the neurotransmitters themselves. It supports dopamine transporter activity.
Yeah, here's your motivation and drive.
There it is. And it modulates GABA receptors.
GABA being the chill chemical.
It is. So you combine that dopamine drive with GABA modulation, and you get this calm drive. Not a frantic, coffee-fueled jitteriness, but a grounded propulsion.
Which would explain why when levels drop, people don't just feel weak, they feel anxious, ungrounded.
The stabilizer is offline.
Okay, we have to pivot here to what might be the single biggest misconception in this whole field. We've been using he and macho, but the source material drops a stat about women that it stops you in your tracks.
It's the stat that usually makes people pause and rewind. Testosterone is the most abundant, biologically active steroid hormone in the female body.
Wait, hold on. Say that again. By volume. More abundant than estrogen.
By abundance, yes. We have spent an entire century defining women by estrogen and men by testosterone. But biologically, women are testosterone-driven organisms too.
So, why is it so ignored? If a woman goes to her doctor and says, I have brain fog, I'm exhausted, is testosterone even on the panel they run?
Rarely. And if it is, it's often dismissed unless it's practically at zero. The medical focus for women has, for 100 years, been on reproduction. Estrogen controls the cycle, so estrogen got all the attention.
Right.
But for vitality, for bone density, for muscle, and critically, for that cognitive agency we've been talking about, testosterone is the driver.
Dr. Ianculovici uses that word, agency, the feeling of being capable.
Yes. When women experience a drop in T from perimenopause or stress or whatever, it often shows up as a loss of confidence. It's not just, oh, I forgot where I put my keys. It's, I don't trust myself to drive at night anymore.
It's a shrinking of your world.
It is. And we normalize it. We say, well, you're 50 now. You're supposed to slow down.
We call it aging.
We call it aging. Dr. Ianculovici calls it a correctable biological signal. And that is a massive, massive paradigm shift. We don't accept losing our teeth as just part of aging anymore, right?
Yeah.
We fix them. Why do we accept losing our executive function?
Okay, so let's say a listener is nodding along right now. They feel the buffering. They're picturing that winter tree. They want to know their status. This takes us to the diagnostic dilemma.
Right.
The source material is very firm on the method of testing, and it goes against what most people get at their annual physical.
This is the spit versus blood debate. And we should be clear, this is still controversial in mainstream medicine. Your standard endocrinologist is going to pull a vial of blood. It's the gold standard.
So why does the Morrell Institute argue that it's looking at the wrong thing?
They argue it's looking at the total inventory, but not the available cash.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Explain the difference. Inventory versus cash.
So when testosterone is in your blood, something like 98% of it is bound up by proteins. Think of that as money in a trust fund. It's yours, it's got your name on it, but you can't spend it. It's biologically inactive.
It's locked up. It can't get into the cells to do anything.
Exactly. Only about 1 to 2% is free or bioavailable. That is the cash in your pocket. That's what can cross the blood-brain barrier and hit those receptors.
And a standard blood test is measuring the trust fund.
Usually, yes, it measures total T. So you can have a normal number on paper, you look like a millionaire, but if all your money is tied up, your brain is starving. You can't buy lunch.
And that's where people can get gaslit, your labs look normal, you're fine, maybe you're just depressed.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
Saliva testing, according to this research, measures the free fraction. It measures the cash in your pocket. It's a better picture of what your cells are actually seeing.
The notes also mention something about rhythms.
Diurnal rhythms. Hormones aren't static, they pulse. They're highest in the morning, lowest in the afternoon. A single blood draw is just a snapshot. It's like taking one photo of a highway at 3 a.m. and saying, there's no traffic.
But with saliva, you can capture the flow throughout the day.
It's much easier to do a 4-point test. You can see the slope. You can see if you're crashing at 2 in the afternoon. And for brain health, that rhythm really matters.
Okay, so that makes sense. Bioavailability and rhythm. But now we have to talk about the fix, because the source material warns against what it calls the soloist mistake.
This is so crucial. If you decide to optimize, you can't just crank up one fader on the mixing board. The body is an orchestra, not a solo act.
A cascade.
An interdependent cascade. You touch one thing, everything else has to shift. The sources are especially critical of the standard practice for women, which is often just prescribing estradiol, or E2, and that's it.
E2 is the strong estrogen, right?
It's the most potent one, yes. It's great for stopping hot flashes. But if you give E2 without the rest of its team, you could be asking for trouble. The text really highlights the importance of estriol, or E3.
Forgotten estrogen.
The protective estrogen. Think of it this way. Estrone, E1, and estradiol, E2, are proliferative. They tell cells to grow, which is good sometimes, but you don't want unchecked growth.
You need a brake pedal.
Estriol E3 is the brake pedal. It's anti-proliferative. It signals calm down. So if you flood the system with E2 and you don't have enough E3 to provide that balance,
You've got a car with an accelerator and no brakes.
precisely. And that's when you can see inflammatory signaling. This is why the whole symphony approach matters. It's not just estrogen and testosterone. It's progesterone, which is vital for the insulation on your nerves.
The myelin sheath.
Yes. And pregnenolone, the mother hormone for memory, DHEA for the immune system. The goal isn't just high T. The goal is high communication between all of these different players.
So it's not about chasing a number, it's about restoring harmony.
It's about restoring the biochemical environment where your body actually wants to function optimally.
You know, this really feels like a shift in thinking away from anti-aging, which always sounds a little bit vain, like let's just pretend I'm 25 forever,
Yeah.
and more towards longevity medicine.
That's the key distinction. Anti-aging is about appearance. Longevity medicine is about function. It's about performance. You know, if you drive a classic car, you don't expect it to run on the oil from 1965. You change the fluid so the engine keeps purring.
That is a powerful reframe. We are the mechanic of our own experience.
And we actually have the tools now. That's the hopeful part of all this. This isn't science fiction.
So, to bring this all in for a landing, we've moved testosterone out of the locker room and into the executive boardroom of the brain.
We've shown it's a builder of neural highways, a key piece of multitasking, and surprisingly, the most abundant steroid in women.
We've learned that checking your hormonal trust fund with a blood test might not tell you if you have any actual cash in your pocket, which is why saliva testing is gaining ground.
And finally, that you can't play a symphony with just a violin. You need the whole orchestra, E3, progesterone, all of it, to keep this balanced and safe.
I just want to leave our listener with this one thought. We often see our personality, our drive, our patience, our intelligence as these fixed traits. We say, I'm just an anxious person, or I'm just getting slower.
We identify with our limitations.
We do. But if this research is right, if these traits are really just the downstream effects of dendritic spine density and neurotransmitter modulation, then how much of you is actually just a biochemical signal waiting to be optimized?
That is the question, isn't it? Are you actually losing your edge, or is your check engine light just on?
Something to mull over. Thanks for diving deck with us.
Always a pleasure.